This episode of our True Crime Podcast is produced for informational purposes. The writers, hosts, and everyone involved in this podcast are private citizens. Our knowledge of this case is limited to information available to the general public from official police reports. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Hello, I'm Edward October. Over the years, I've narrated more ghost stories, horror shows, and creepypastas than I can count. And yet, the crimes discussed on our True Crime Podcast managed to scare the shit out of me. This program is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. If you are such a person, go ahead and switch off this podcast. Listen to something else. Are you still with us? Well, we've warned you.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Cam, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm okay. We've got a special episode today.
Special, yes. Special.
This episode that we have today is a bit different. Last year, we were contacted on Facebook by some women that were asking us if we could shed some light on their friend Leanne Davidson Beck's death. Leanne's friends and family believed that her death involved some foul play. So we're going to report it to you, her story, using interviews from her friends and from police reports.
Yes, we are.
Ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Each year, almost 10 million people are affected by intimate partner violence in the United States. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, this equates to around 20 people each minute. Despite this, victims of domestic violence continue to be stigmatized in society, and the blame is often placed on them instead of their abusers. Before listening to Leanne's story, it's important to remember the following facts. Victims of domestic abuse are often tied to their abusers in several ways. For example, through children, housing, and finances. These ties make it much more difficult to leave and can often be the reason why victims choose to go back. There's also the embarrassment and shame associated with being a victim of abuse, the fear that nobody will believe them, or the belief that they were somehow to blame. It's also crucial to note that intimate partner violence does not occur immediately, and the relationship usually begins as the total opposite, a term we now know is love bombing. The abuser will shower their partner with gifts and affection and will push for the relationship to move faster than it normally would. This outpouring of love creates a false sense of security and is carefully curated to hook someone in. As the abuse begins, the victim is left feeling confused, and hopefully that if they just keep trying, the relationship will go back to being positive and loving as it once was. Unfortunately, this rarely happens, and the situation only becomes more dangerous as time goes on.
Leanne Davidson Beck was known for being fiercely independent, tenacious, and kind. She had a good heart, and she was loved by everybody who knew her. Leanne was a go-getter, and her friends say that she'd always be the one encouraging them to get up and do fun things, instead of just sitting around bored. She had the ability to always find the positive in bad situations, and she was always giggling. Leanne was an only child, so she made lots of friends throughout her life, who she remained close to and treated like family. For this episode, we interviewed two of Leanne's friends.
Yeah, so my name is Jessi. I met Leanne around third grade. Our neighborhoods backed up to each other, and back in that time, bike riding and being outside every day was what we did. And I met her through just being out in the neighborhood, playgrounds, bike rides. There's a school across the street from us, and everybody kind of hung out there. And she came over one day. She had just moved into the area, and we just hit it off. We hung the whole day, and then every day pretty much that we were able to since then. And then she moved away around 7th grade, I believe, to New Mexico and then Arizona. And we stayed in touch the entire time until her passing.
I'm Kristin, and I met Leanne in 2012 here in Nebraska. She had moved here for nursing. I had just moved here from Nashville, and it was February and miserable because we were both used to warmth. We had a little duplex that I moved in on one side. The other side was vacant for like a week or two. And then she moved in. So we met that way, mostly from my son. My little boy he was like 3 at the time and knew no stranger. Like good and bad. Thankfully, we live in a small town. Thankfully, it was Leanne. So, he just went over and like decided that that was going to be his friends, Leanne and her husband at the time. And so my son basically had us meet, and we were great friends. She only lived here a year, but we spent every day together. We were neighbors. We do things together. And then when she moved away, I visited her. She would come visit me after my daughter was born. She came out. But we would meet sometimes in Denver, like when she wanted to go snowboarding or something. We kept in touch the whole time. She was going to be a bridesmaid in my wedding that September, that she passed.
By all accounts, Leanne had everything going for her. She was beautiful, smart, and surrounded by many people who loved her. She also worked extremely hard in her career as a nurse and eventually became an organ transplant coordinator for the Mayo Clinic. Despite the difficulties of nursing, her friends say she never complained about her job, and she loved what she did. As Leanne got older, one of her biggest dreams in life was to have a loving, happy family. She married her first husband in 2012, but unfortunately, the relationship didn't work out. After a few years, she met another man and had fallen pregnant, but they went on their separate ways before their daughter was born. When Leanne's baby was just 2 months old, she met Jason Beck, and they began dating in July 2019. Leanne texted her friends to let them know about her new boyfriend, and they all agreed he sounded great. Jason treated her well, showered her with gifts, booked holidays for the 3 of them, and helped with the baby.
So I remember her texting me, and she's like, I met this guy. He's really great. He's going to take me to Spain. He's just like the best thing ever. We're going to Mexico. We're going to the beach. We're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, like you just had this baby. And she's like, well, but, he said he wants to marry me. And I remember her saying, he says he knows me from high school, but I don't remember him. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. We've been out of high school like a really long time. I don't remember half the people like at all. And she's like, yeah, he said that he's always liked me. And I'm like, that's just a little bit odd if you don't even remember him. So I was already kind of seeing red flags right there. But then I was really like, whoa, you're going to go out of country with a newborn baby to Spain. Like, what does he do? I would ask these questions because I'm like,
He loved
a lot. He very much love bombed her, and she was flattered. And just,
especially, yeah.
I was just like, that seems like a lot, but I mean, as long as you're happy, I think I still have conversations, like text conversations from that. And then before I know it, she's literally like, this is not very long after they started dating that she's like, I think he's going to ask me to marry him in Mexico. I'm like, are you sure that you want to do this? She's like, he's picking out a ring right now from Jared. And I'm like, are you, I just remember going, are you sure? Because I'm like, ooh, I can't even commit to like writing a Facebook post like the first time. Like I have to redo it. Like, how could you like even go here? And she's just like, I don't know. I'm so nervous. We're leaving for, I think it was Rocky Point or something where they would always go this weekend. And the next thing I know, she's like, he did. And she sent me a picture of the ring. I'm like, holy crap. Like, is that even real? Like, it was like a massive, big ring. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, as long as you're happy, because it's so hard to tell somebody that they've been through a lot and they were really sad and you've seen them really upset, you know, after the breakup, that it was like, I don't want to be a dick and be like, yeah, this is fucking weird.
Yeah.
Because
I asked a lot
bursting
about
someone's bubble.
From that moment on, things moved very quickly for Leanne and Jason. While on holiday at Rocky Point in Mexico, he asked her to marry him, and she said yes. Weeks later, Leanne announced that she was pregnant with Jason's child.
The first red flag for both of us was when we couldn't even get a hold of her.
Phone calls or text back like she would usually do. I mean, she usually would respond right away, and then it just kind of would slowly get, you know, in between, like from this time to this time, it would get longer in between calls or texts. And I chalked it up as, you know, having 2 babies and working. And then it just, then the posts on Facebook and Instagram, they all started getting, you know, I mean, she'd post all the time because they were constantly going and doing stuff. And then it got, all right, well, she hasn't posted in a while. What's going on? So I would text her or I would get like a short response. I'm like, okay. But I didn't, like, again, I chalked it up to having 2 babies and working.
I remember her asking me to be part of her wedding, but then it quickly changed plans that there wasn't going to be like a full wedding. That first they were just going to go elope in Spain. And then that changed. And I think it was because she was pregnant with Colton. And then they ended up literally, like, there was no date that I knew of or anything, and it just like showed up on Facebook, or she sent me pictures.
Stop opening.
And she's like, so it
door,
happened.
you
I'm
guys.
like, thanks for the notice, asshole. Like, really? And her first wedding wasn't a massive wedding, but they did do like a destination wedding. I think they went to somewhere in Jamaica or something, and it was just her family. So I don't think a big, huge wedding was like super important to her. But I thought it was weird too that that's the route that she kind of went when she was kind of planning for something bigger. It was odd. It was weird, but I'm like, oh, well.
Again, wanting your friend to be happy.
I think I remember her saying in Spain, didn't she at one point say we were going to like come to Spain?
All of us were going to go to Spain. Yeah. And then she's like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to do that. And then it was like, oh, we're planning for something else. And then all of a sudden it was like, surprise, we did it.
Yeah. Which that was odd knowing her.
In the months following their marriage, Leanne and Jason moved into a home together in Peoria, Arizona, and their son was born. Although it appeared that Leanne was happy during this time, she didn't speak to people about what was happening at home, and most of the following information was not known until much later.
In September 2020, just over a year after they had first met, Leanne called the Peoria Police Department for help. She told the dispatcher that she had been sitting outside of her mother-in-law's house and had been locked out. As officers arrived, Leanne was hysterical, as she insisted that she just wanted to get her son and go home. Leanne told officers that she and Jason had decided to go out for an evening while Julie, Jason's mother, cared for their son. At some point during the evening, she and Jason had argued because he wanted to go through her cell phone. When they got back to Julie's house, the verbal argument quickly escalated to physical violence. Leanne told police that Jason had held her down on the bed and had begun strangling her. Clearly, she was afraid and reluctant to share too many details, as she did not want Jason to get into trouble. As the police shone their flashlights on her, they noted injuries to her neck, chest, and bruises appearing on her upper arms. At the same time, officers interviewing Jason noticed that he also had visible marks on his skin, and his t-shirt was torn. When he was asked what happened, he called Leanne a, quote, crazy lady, and claimed he had a video that proved she was the one who had assaulted him. Officers were eventually shown the footage recorded by another adult present in the home, and according to the police report, it showed the following. Leanne is standing over Jason as he is sitting on the couch. She pleads with Jason to give her back her keys and belongings so she can go home, and he repeatedly says no or ignores her. Leanne becomes frustrated and asks him how he can beat her in the bedroom and then refuse to give her back her things. She then hits Jason across the face before he kicks her to the ground and charges at her. The video then stops. After reviewing the video, both Leanne and Jason were taken to the Peoria Police Department, and they were both charged with assault and disorderly conduct.
Due to the nature of Leanne's employment, she had to inform her manager that she had been arrested and provide details of the incident. This was the first time her coworkers were made aware of what Leanne was going through at home. Leanne completed an anger management course and forwarded the certificate over to her employer so she could continue her work. She also told her manager that Jason refused to attend the course with her despite being ordered to do so. Unfortunately, it's very likely that this initial incident would have negatively impacted Leanne's view of law enforcement and their ability to help her going forward. Despite being covered in injuries and trapped in her mother-in-law's home, she was videoed by witnesses of the abuse and arrested for acting in retaliation. Because of this, her family and friends can only speculate about the number of incidents Leanne must have faced alone. In the following months, Leanne and Jason moved to a new home owned by his mother, Julie Beck. Sadly, Leanne's friends believe that this was just another manipulation tactic to keep Leanne under control. Every time she planned to leave, a big gesture would be made, making it more difficult for her to walk away. The new house was directly next door to Julie's own home. It was beautiful, big enough for Leanne and Jason to live with 2 children in a safe, quiet neighborhood. In addition, while Julie was next door, childcare arrangements would be less of a worry while Leanne worked from home. The house was everything Leanne had dreamed of, and so she decided to give it another go for the sake of the kids.
However, by February 2021, Leanne had experienced several more instances of physical violence. She felt she had no choice but to leave the home and file an order of protection against Jason. While giving reasons for the order, she explained that on the 13th of February, she was trying to go to sleep when Jason grabbed her arm and left marks, including a visible hand-shaped bruise. He had also thrown a boot at her head. Just a week later, Jason hit Leanne in the face and broke her glasses. She said he then held her down and put her in a chokehold, telling her that he was going to, quote, put her to sleep so that she would never wake up. The order of protection was granted on the 22nd of February, and the next day, Leanne filed for divorce.
That February, I get a text from her because I'm trying to plan my wedding. She's going to be out here, and I'm not allowed to send a package to her house. And I'm like, she's like, I need you to send it to this other address. I'm not living there right now. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so I found out in February of 21, she said a lot of things that had happened. There wasn't massive detail, but it was, she wasn't there. She had moved out to send things to her friend's house. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of knew something was going on, but she didn't elaborate massively. And I think she finally saw it at that point for a little bit. She saw through his crap. Yeah. And she was done.
This didn't stop Jason from trying to get her back, though. Within days of Leanne filing for divorce, he wrote the following note, pleading with her to give him another chance. Here's the note, quote, Leanne, please rethink how far you're taking this. Please realize the damage you will cause our children. I understand where your head is at. Mine too. We need some time, which I have and will give you. I do not want a divorce. If we can please resolve our issues and go to couples counseling, please. I want to fix us for the kids so they can live a happy, normal life with a family life. Please think about this. We can have a new, fresh start away from the alcohol and friends. Please, I love you. Please, Leanne, think of the kids and our futures. Please, love, Jason. Leanne agreed to meet with Jason to discuss the relationship and custody arrangements, and on the 1st of March, he convinced her to dismiss the order of protection. He promised that if she would give him another chance, he would attend anger management classes and seek therapy for his behavior. A week later, she decided to move back into the home, but she quickly learned that Jason had no intention of following through with his promises. During another brief separation in May 2021, Jason showed up at Leanne's workplace and forced his way into an employees-only building. that could only be accessed with a work badge. He claimed he was trying to find Leanne so he could retrieve his cell phone. Security then removed him, and Leanne was left feeling completely embarrassed in front of her coworkers.
On June 5th, 2021, the Peoria police were dispatched to Jason and Leanne's home following reports of another physical altercation. As officers arrived, they discovered Leanne, her father, and her father's friend in a verbal altercation with Julie and Jason. Leanne told the officers that she was working from home that morning when Jason had begun arguing with her and accusing her of cheating. Jason took her work phone, and she had to plead with Julie to get it back from him. She then called her father to let him know what was happening, and he immediately began going to the home with his friend. As Leanne was on the phone with her dad, Jason took Leanne's keys, debit card, driver's license, and work laptop and told her that he hoped she got fired so she would have to stay with him forever. Leanne knew that the argument would escalate, so she tried to leave the house via the garage. But Jason caught up to her and knocked her to the ground before dragging her back inside. He then wrapped his arms tightly around her chest so she couldn't breathe and carried her into the bedroom, where he pinned her to the bed. As she was pinned down, he made punching motions towards her face with a closed fist, and she said that she could feel the air movement passing her face. He never made contact, but repeatedly made comments like, quote, "Dare you to fucking breathe or move your fucking head, and I'm going to make contact with you." Leanne began screaming for him to get off and to leave her alone. At the same time, her father had arrived outside and could hear his daughter screaming. He began banging on the door, demanding to be let in. And although Julie was there, she refused to open the door for him, fearing he and his friends would, quote, hurt Jason. When speaking to the police, Julie admitted that Jason had chased Leanne out of the home, but said that this was, quote, just because he wanted to get her phone. After hearing the details and witnessing the visible injuries of Leanne's body, officers decided to arrest Jason for assault and disorderly conduct. Jason was then transported to the police station where he was read his Miranda rights. During the interview, he claimed that he had attempted to speak to Leanne that morning, but she seemed annoyed. She told Jason that she was working, and he grabbed her work phone saying, quote, "I don't want an argument, just 2 seconds of your time." According to Jason, she then punched him in the face unprovoked, and he had to grab her from behind to subdue her. He denied holding her down on the bed or chasing her out of the home despite multiple witnesses who observed him doing so. He told officers that he had footage from inside the house that would prove his version of events, but when they asked to see it, he told them that, quote, he would rather show a judge. He then states that Leanne has hit him, quote, about 4,000 times over the past few years, but claims he doesn't want her to get into trouble as she would lose her job and he would take the fall. Hours later, as he was released, officers advised Jason that he wasn't allowed to enter the home he shared with Leanne or to have contact with her until after he appeared in court. Within 6 hours, Jason had already violated those terms. At 5:50 a.m., Leanne heard the door chime to alert her that somebody had entered the home, and she knew Jason was the only one with a key, and she immediately called the police. As Jason walked into the bedroom, he asked her who she was on the phone with and told her to, quote, hang up, saying, quote, "You're so stupid, I'm just getting some stuff." He gathered some items and left. Police visited Jason at his mother's home, and he told them that he was only getting his belongings and he didn't think Leanne would be there. Again, he was instructed that he was not permitted to enter the home and was not allowed to contact Leanne. Officers decided not to pursue charges for this matter, but the police department notified a pretrial services about the violation. Jason was then served with a new order of protection on June 8, 2021. This time, it also included Leanne's place of work, so he could no longer try to contact her there. Leanne then moved out of the home she shared with Jason and began living with her father in Surprise, Arizona. While Leanne awaited the upcoming court hearing to determine legal decision-making and custody arrangements for their son, she began reaching out to Jason's ex-girlfriends to ask if they would be willing to testify in court on her behalf. Unfortunately, they were all too afraid to do so, having also experienced abuse in the hands of Jason. During this time, Leanne also spoke to her friend Jessi and confided in her about the relationship.
Yeah, I told her, you're more than welcome to come here and stay with us. You know, she would call my family, my mom and dad. She knew us since she was a baby. Or not baby, but she knew us since she was in 3rd grade, a young child. And my family was her family was my family. And I told her, I said, if you need to get away and come up here, you can work your job here. It's remote. You come, you get out, whatever you need. You're always welcome here. And I knew it was a long shot because I was so far away, and it's hard, to take your children to the other side of the country pretty much. But it was out there. I had to offer it. And I wish she would have.
I did the same. I said, you can come out here. You can. We have room. You can stay, even if it's for a couple weeks. We'll hang out. We'll take care of the kids, whatever. You just need to get away. She's like, I know. I just can't, he wouldn't go for that or whatever. And I remember telling her, and I remember this distinctively because I have it in text still, is that I said, this isn't okay. Like, none of it is okay. He's not going to put hands on you. You can't allow this to happen. Like, it's not going to be good. And then she says, or I'm going to be dead.
So she knew.
Or I'm going to end up dead. He's going to kill me. Yeah. And I'm like, it was like, you didn't want to believe it because I'm like, okay, well, she's getting away. But she knew what he was completely capable of. Like, she's probably been close to it with him, with the way he was. But when she said, it seriously haunts me when I remember saying, I'm going to end up dead. Like, he's going to kill me.
That one incident too, in June, where her father had came, he actually had her face down on the bed on her upper back, so she couldn't breathe. She said in the police report that it was hard for me to breathe. And that's when he had, her driver's license, her bank card. He would take everything so she could not get away. Keys, license, debit card, computer, phone. So she had no way to get away unless she was literally on foot, which is what happened.
Jumping ahead, didn't his mom have her wallet and stuff in the nightstand after she passed?
Yes.
In a back bedroom where I wouldn't imagine she would be ever
in her house, and not even their house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the other thing, is that Julie could see everything that was going on inside that house 24/7. She had access to the cameras in the house next door, in the garage outside.
Cameras? Was there Ring cameras or was there anything else inside?
I believe they had Ring cameras. I'm not sure what they had inside.
I think, I don't know, is Ring inside too? I don't know. I just know they had cameras in the living room and throughout the house, the outside of the house, the garage. So Julie could definitely see what was going on. I'd hope that there wasn't one in the bedroom, but
never know.
You don't.
Yes.
And that
June incident too, after, they arrested Jason because all of Leanne's injuries were consistent with what she said had happened. So they arrested Jason. Julie did not like that. She couldn't understand, according to the video, she could not understand why her precious son was getting arrested and Leanne was not. Then she was very upset because, Jason was arrested and Leanne was free to go back into the house with her father. She was flipping out saying, I don't want him in my house. This is my house. He is not welcome here. And the police officer was just like, this is Leanne's house. She has rights. If she wants her father over as a guest or a visitor, then that is her right. She can do that. And she was not happy that she wasn't getting her way and John could go into his daughter's house and be there.
Unreal. So when did they file for dissolution of marriage, right? Isn't that what it was?
That's what yes. She filed for divorce February of 21. And then shortly after that, she dismissed one of the order protections. But then he was served with divorce papers for separation in March, but he did not respond until I believe June.
Just ignoring it, hoping it'll go
but
away.
Yeah, and then, you know, to sweet talk her and all that. So she had an order of protection because there was June 6th. That's when the day after when he got arrested, there was, you know, he was with a violation of the violated the emergency order of protection, and released under conditions. But I don't know why they didn't pursue the charges in this case. Those are the things we'll never know, unfortunately, is why, you know, she dropped this charge or the order of protection. I wish that's something we would, but because she was always wanted to see the good in people. And I think that she was praying and hoping that things would get better. And all she wanted was a little family. She loved those babies more than anything. And she wanted it so bad that I think she believed that he could change. I mean, maybe there was some good to him, but
the bad outweighs the good.
Exactly. Yep. So after that June issue, there was, you know, that's when she moved into the surprise house with her dad and had the order of protection. And that's when she called me after that.
The court granted the temporary custody orders on August 4th, 2021. Leanne was awarded sole legal decision-making for their son. However, as Jason was not determined to be a risk to the child, he was also awarded 50% custody. Leanne and Jason filed a temporary agreement stating that neither would consume alcohol for 90 days and would agree to alcohol testing during this period. As the end of August approached, Leanne was preparing to fly to Nebraska to be a bridesmaid at her friend's Kristin wedding.
I need to tell you something. And I'm like, what? Please don't tell me you're pregnant, for fuck's sake. Like, please. Giving her a hard time. Or I'm like, and you don't have COVID. Like, please tell me. She's like, no. So she's the word. Jason and I are fucking again, which was completely out of character for her. She does not talk like that. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, he really wants to come to your wedding. I'm like, oh, really? Like, I'd never met him. And I've heard everything shitty and horrible about this man that I don't want to see him because I'm going to do something stupid. And I was just like, I didn't know what to say because one hand, I'm like, no, absolutely not. And then on the other hand, I'm like, is that going to make her not be able to come here? And what is going on? Like, literally what is going on? Because you're supposed to be getting a divorce. Like, everything's going good. You were doing great. What is happening? And again, have 20 people here. I'm trying to take care of everybody. And I'm like, Leanne, you know, I said something in the lines of, if he comes, he better not act like an idiot. He better not touch you. He better not look at you funny.
Yeah,
if he does, he ain't gonna make it out. I will fucking kill him if he ruins my wedding.
If he's cool, I'm cool. But if he acts a fool, I'll stab him. And is he super possessive? Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, he wouldn't have made it out of a cornfield if he had put a finger on her with these little redneck boys that hang around. Okay, so
we've got redneck area too, so
yeah, they're not fond of that. You know, they don't touch females at all.
Hell no, no. And I'm like, I can't even believe this is happening right now. Like, what the hell? And I'm super confused. I regret to this day not calling her and going, what the hell is going on? But I don't think she was texting me. So I'm pretty sure that he was the one who was texting me because it was not the way Leanne really spoke. But again, in my head, I'm going crazy. I'm doing all kinds of shit. I'm busy and I'm just like, okay, whatever happens, happens. And to me, when she was so stressed and worried about watching the kids or who's going to take care of the kids, what's going on, I feel like she went to Jason to play nice because I don't think that her parents could have watched the kids through 4 days to say, I need someone. I mean, her daughter was completely could go with dad and be totally fine. Not even a worry. This baby boy that in my heart, I truly think that she went to try to play nice and be like, I'm going to this wedding. Let's just work things out. Let's
freak out.
Love bomb. Let's make it work. And she probably fell for it, and well, obviously she just so badly wanted. And so part of me feels like her going back was to also, so she could come here and be a part of what she had planned to do. I don't think she intended it to be all together again, happy-go-lucky with him, but someone who could watch her son. It threw me off, that was even something. And then, and I didn't think this beforehand, but after, the last almost 2 years, it's stuck with me. That's the only logical damn thing I could think that she was trying to do.
Sadly, Leanne never made it to the wedding.
At 3:07 a.m. on the 29th of August, 2021, Jason Beck made a panicked call to 911, stating that his wife had vomited and was not breathing. He told the operator that she was lying on the bed, so he was instructed to move her to the floor before attempting CPR. After moving her, Jason began giving chest compressions, but was heard in the background saying, quote, "She's fucking dead," and, quote, "I can't do it." As officers entered the master bedroom, they discovered Jason carrying out CPR while Julie stood at the foot of the bed, filming on her cell phone. The police took over the compressions and asked Jason and Julie to exit the room. They noted that Leanne's eyes were fixed and they were unable to locate a pulse. Despite the life-saving efforts carried out by the officers on the scene, Leanne was pronounced dead around 3:30 a.m. She was just 33 years old. The fire department arrived soon after to begin their assessment of Leanne's body and immediately became suspicious of Jason's story. They had located blood spots underneath Leanne and could not figure out where they were coming from. They then made the decision to roll her over and discovered several injuries that were previously concealed. In addition to these fresh wounds all over Leanne's body, she also had a golf ball-sized lump on the back of her head. Her body appeared to be damp, as though she had been washed, and she was surrounded by clear liquid. One responding firefighter reported that it seemed as though Leanne had been deceased for some time due to her cold temperature and the visible lividity on her arms, head, and neck. Police officers began a search of the home and located a yellow towel with bloodstains on the floor in the bathroom, long clumps of hair, and a mop bucket filled with dirty water in the hallway. They also observed several dried bloodstains leading from the garage to the bedroom. In the garage, an officer noted a large spider-web crack on the passenger side window of Leanne's car, which Jason and Leanne had been traveling in that night. As Jason and Julie waited to hear if Leanne was okay, Officer Joseph McGow decided to take an initial statement from Jason. He claimed that they had been going through a divorce but had reconciled over the previous 5 days. On the evening of Saturday, the 28th, they had decided to go out for a date night and had visited a few bars and restaurants. When they returned home, around midnight, Leanne had vomited in bed. She decided to get up and shower, and Jason helped her clean the vomit from her hair. He then left her as he changed the bed sheets, and when he returned, he claimed Leanne was lying in the shower in the, quote, normal fetal position. Now, it's important to note that the shower in question is a walk-in shower, probably wide enough for one person to stand up in. He then claims that he turned the shower on and dragged Leanne out, helping her to get dry. He put Leanne in bed, and when he glanced at her, it looked like she wasn't breathing. He said he then, quote, pushed on her, as he didn't know how to carry out CPR and tried to blow in her mouth. As she started to turn blue, he panicked and called Julie.
Following this statement, Jason was informed that Leanne was dead, and he began crying hysterically. He tried to re-enter the bedroom, but officers informed him that he was no longer allowed. Both he and Julie were removed from the home shortly after. Julie was then interviewed and claimed she'd received a panicked call from Jason at around 2:30 a.m., insisting that she come over because something was wrong with Leanne. She knew by his voice that something serious had occurred. As Julie told police her version of events, she didn't hold back on her disdain for Leanne. She claims that she finally thought Leanne was faking being dead as, quote, she looked good. She also described Leanne as bipolar, claiming that she would suddenly switch and get angry before taking off. Police informed Julie that she would have to give her cell phone over to officers as part of the search warrant, and they noticed that her demeanor suddenly changed. She started shouting that she needed a lawyer and that neither she nor Jason had done anything wrong. After several minutes of explaining why officers needed to gather evidence from her cell phone, Julie suddenly admitted that she had filmed a portion of the event because she was sure that Leanne was faking. She was asked why she hadn't already told police this information, and she said, quote, because it's really traumatic. Jason was then interviewed for a second time that morning while sitting in an undercover police vehicle. He now adds that on his way home from their night out, he received a call from another woman that he had been pursuing romantically. According to Jason, Leanne was upset and began crying, but it didn't become physical. As they got home, she then walked into the house and stumbled into walls as she made her way into the bedroom. Jason didn't know why her car window was cracked and couldn't explain the blood leading from the garage to the bedroom as he, quote, never touched her. When asked to explain the injuries in Leanne's body, he claimed that they may be a result of rough sex. He also claims that Leanne fell out of the hot tub on the evening of the 27th, which could have caused her head injury. Finally, he told the officers that he had left his phone at some point through the night and had to use Leanne's cell phone to dial 911.
The investigation into Leanne's death began, and police quickly learned that she had sent a text message to her coworker at 2:51 a.m., just 16 minutes before 911 was called. It said, quote, "Hey girl, I'm not feeling good at all. Major stomach pain. I'm not sure who I'm taking over for, but I won't be able to as of now. I'm running to the ER by my house. If someone can cover, hopefully, just for a couple hours. I don't want to text all the girls." End quote.
It just doesn't add up at all. And the fact that the message was sent to the wrong people was even more. And it's really sad that the people who, I think, was it the people who got the message, they immediately knew because they weren't working, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. They were like instantly like called a welfare check because they're like, she's dead.
Yeah, they knew.
Well,
you know,
it didn't follow proper. She texted somebody that wasn't supposed to be texted. She just texted.
Correct.
Whoever.
So the timeline just doesn't add up. What he's saying happened doesn't add up. And unfortunately, I don't think those are things that we will ever find out.
Her coworkers were aware of the domestic abuse Leanne had suffered and had noticed that she had started wearing her wedding ring again. The coworker contacted Leanne's boss to inform her of the suspicious text, and her boss then called Leanne's father to ask if he could carry out a welfare check. At 12:06 p.m., Jason was interviewed for a third time at the police station, and only now remembers a significant part of the story that could explain Leanne's injuries. He says that on the way home, Leanne decided she needed to pee and jumped out of the car while it was traveling at around 5 miles per hour. Jason stopped the car, got out to help, and found Leanne on the ground near the back passenger tire. He said she seemed fine, but sounded drunk and kept yelling. After she returned to the car, Jason received a call from another woman, and a verbal argument began. He said she got extremely angry and began slamming his phone against the dashboard. He had no idea where his phone went after that, and claimed that they had arrived home shortly after.
The following day, Julie called detectives to inform them that Jason had found his cell phone at the side of the road in a bush. She claims that Jason wanted to hand the phone over to the police as he had nothing to hide. A Peoria police officer then met Jason at the location where he claimed to have had found the phone. Jason told him that he had since turned it off because he was receiving numerous messages accusing him of killing Leanne. He directed the officer to the area where Leanne had jumped out of the car and said that his phone must have fallen out of his pocket when he helped her up off the ground. After this admission, however, Jason had changed his story for the fourth time. Despite claiming that Leanne had jumped out of the moving vehicle before their verbal argument, he now says that he and Leanne were using his phone to listen to music on the way back when he received the phone call. He said the verbal argument began but didn't last long before Leanne claimed that she had to pee. Jason told her to wait as, quote, there was a good song on the radio. And he began driving the long way home so he could listen to it. Despite telling her to wait, Leanne jumped out of the vehicle and fell to the ground. He now says that he picked her up off the ground but couldn't remember if she peed or not. After this conversation, Jason's phone was placed into evidence and taken back to the police department for further analysis.
On the 31st of August, Leanne's autopsy was carried out. The medical examiner states that the abrasions across her body were consistent with someone who had exited a moving vehicle. Despite this, no asphalt or rocks were found, confirming that the wounds had been cleaned. While examining Leanne's head, he discovered a large skull fracture, which had caused a significant bleed on the brain. Leanne's official cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma to the skull. During the autopsy, it was also noted that Leanne's bladder was full. According to Healthline, it takes approximately 8 to 9 hours for an adult bladder to fill, meaning Leanne did not pee when getting out of the car. Her toxicology report would also later show that she had only tested positive for alcohol, caffeine, and nicotine. Her blood alcohol concentration was around 0.16. Just days later, Leanne's body was released to Jason by the medical examiner, who arranged for Leanne's body to be moved to the Family Burial and Cremation Center. At this stage, Jason had failed to mention that he was a suspect in Leanne's death and did not have the right to control her body or make funeral arrangements due to the pending dissolution of marriage. Her body was then held for a day before a private autopsy was carried out at the request of Jason's attorney. According to the police report, the private autopsy occurred on the 4th of September and resulted in similar findings to Leanne's initial autopsy. In his findings, the doctor agreed on the cause of death and wrote, quote, "These injuries are consistent with the reported fall or ejection from a motor vehicle. No patterned injuries were noted that would be consistent with tread marks."
On the 8th of September, Jason also arranged a private lie detector test despite not being asked to do so. He sent the results through to detectives. He was asked the following 2 questions. 1. On August 29th, did you strike Leanne in the head with any object? Answer, no. 2. On August 29th, did you cause Leanne's head injury? Answer, no. The examiner stated that there were no indications of deception during this test. However, it's important to note that these questions were likely provided by Jason himself or his attorney. It wasn't until the 9th of September that the Peoria Police Department discovered that Leanne's body had been released to Jason in error. It took another day for her body to be located at the Heritage Funeral Chapel, and her family asked for a hold to be put on her remains. 2 days later, Julie Beck sent the following message to Leanne's parents. Quote, "Dear John and Lisa, we are reaching out to you on behalf of Jason. Jason would be interested in setting up communication with only the 2 of you to collaborate with funeral proceedings. Jason is aware of Leanne's request to be cremated and spread into the ocean. There are serious safety concerns regarding your side of the family from false accusations that have been circulating that police made Jason aware of. Therefore, there needs to be communication to discuss possible separate ceremonies as advised by police and funeral director. Jason wants you guys involved and wants you to come together on behalf of Leanne to give her the respect and love she deserves at this time. Please text back if you are willing to communicate a plan. Jason will be taking care of all arrangement costs involving his wife's resting. Thank you." Jason then filed an emergency appointment of special administrator regarding his right to control Leanne's funeral arrangements, but it was quickly denied. The following day, Leanne's father, John, was granted a temporary order which finally gave him control over Leanne's remains and her estate.
As the investigation continued, detectives received the reports from the examination of Leanne, Jason, and Julie's cell phones, which gave them more insight into the events that unfolded on August 29th. On Julie's phone, a series of videos were discovered, beginning at 3:06 a.m., approximately 1 minute before 911 was called. In the first video, Julie leaves her residence and walks next door to Leanne and Jason's home. She sounds distressed, repeatedly saying, quote, "Oh my God," as she makes her way inside. As she walks into the bedroom, Leanne can be seen lying nude on the bed while Jason tells Julie that she's not breathing. Jason is then seen dialing 911 before moving Leanne to the floor and carrying out CPR. The video cuts off as police arrive. The second video, taken a few minutes later, shows Jason in the living room. Throughout this video, Julie can be heard offering Jason answers to the questions he's being asked. For example, as Jason talks to officers and struggles to describe what happened, she says, quote, "You guys went to a restaurant, right? And then what?" When he's describing Leanne throwing up a red liquid, she says, quote, "Red wine, right? Because she drinks red wine." As these recordings are described in the report, an interesting note is made by the officer. Quote, "Observations. Julie started recording prior to entering Jason's residence, which suggests Julie already knew what happened. Julie appeared to be secretly recording as to capture Jason's act for the camera. Julie did not tell the officer she had recorded the incident with her phone, even when asked about it. Once her phone was seized, then she admitted to recording the incident. It appears Jason's behavior and concern for Leanne is inconsistent. There were times when he would stop crying and showed no emotion." The analysis of both Jason and Leanne's phones also gave more information regarding the timeline of events. Jason received the call from the woman he was previously dating at 12:07 a.m. on August 29th. At 12:31 and 12:32 a.m., Leanne's phone connects to Wi-Fi and calls Jason twice for a few seconds at a time. It's likely that these calls were an attempt to locate Jason's cell phone. Leanne then receives a call from a friend at 2:04 a.m., but she does not answer. At 2:21, 2:22, and 2:23 a.m., Leanne's phone calls Jason 3 times in quick succession. Again, these calls appear to be in an attempt to locate his own phone. At 2:51 a.m., Leanne sends a text to her coworker about being ill and needing cover at work. 12 minutes later, at 3:03 a.m., Julie is called from Leanne's phone. Finally, at 3:07 a.m., 911 is called.
On Jason's phone, detectives also discovered a disturbing video from the 19th of December, 2020. It shows Leanne sitting on the toilet wearing a long-sleeved pink shirt, which appears to be covered in bloodstains. A large bump is also visible on Leanne's head. Jason can be heard asking if she gave the wedding ring back, and Leanne replies that she will. Officers then learned of another incident that happened much earlier in the relationship, just months after Leanne and Jason had first met. After hearing of Leanne's death, a couple came forward claiming that on November 30th, 2019, they were on their way to a relative's home when they observed a female walking down the street. They noticed she wasn't wearing a jacket or sweater, even though it was cold, and they thought that was odd. After leaving the relative's home, they noticed the same female again, except this time she was running from a black truck that appeared to be chasing her. The couple watched as the male got out of the truck and grabbed the female in a bear hug, and they decided to stop their vehicle to see if she needed help. The woman then approached the car and asked if she could get in. Once again, she introduced herself as Leanne and explained that her boyfriend, Jason, was getting jealous as he was unable to get into her work phone. She told him that she was 12 weeks pregnant. They asked Leanne where they could take her, and she asked to be dropped off at her parents' home. Following this, detectives began gathering information about Jason's relationship history, and they reached out to several of his ex-girlfriends who detailed their own horrifying experiences with him.
One ex-girlfriend claims that their relationship had started perfectly and Jason was a good guy. Unfortunately, he quickly became controlling and didn't want her to see her family or friends. He would call her names and would quickly become physical when he was drunk. This included slamming her face into the steering wheel as she was driving, pushing her into a door frame, and slapping her across the face. Overall, he was extremely insecure and jealous when it came to her having any friendships or even conversations with other men. She told officers that she had heard that Leanne was so drunk that she choked on her own vomit while Jason was caring for her and cleaning the sheets. She says she had a hard time believing it, as the Jason she knew, quote, would have just left her in bed. Another ex-girlfriend had a similar story. She confirms that Jason was also great to her in the beginning, but suddenly changed. She describes him as controlling, jealous, and isolating. Jason was also physically abusive to her. He would pin her to the bed, spit in her face, and leave bruises all over her body. While they were at a wedding together in another state, Jason got jealous as she spoke to another guy. He then left the wedding, got on a plane, leaving her there all alone. She had to arrange to move out of the house when Jason was away, as she knew he wouldn't have let her leave otherwise. She, along with another ex, claimed Jason was reliant on Julie, his mother, in an unhealthy way. She said as she was moving her things, Julie came over and began freaking out, implying that Jason would kill himself if she left. She says Julie was present during every argument they had, and although she witnessed the abuse, she would still have Jason's back. Finally, she says she doesn't think that Jason is the type to premeditate something, but believes he gets too drunk and snaps, only later realizing what he has done. A third ex-girlfriend also told police that Jason was controlling and possessive of her, even though the relationship only lasted for around a year. When they were out in public, he would squeeze her arm and tell her to sit down and be quiet. He would take money from her under the guise of saving it, and would also take her cell phone and refuse to give it back. She tried to leave the house multiple times and had to do it when she was out of Jason's eye line or when he was distracted. She ran away multiple times barefoot as she didn't want to alert him by getting shoes.
On the 7th of February 2022, the medical examiner's report was finalized and forwarded to the Peoria Police Department. It states, quote, "The constellation of findings is consistent with the strong blow to the back of the head. These injuries would likely have not been immediately incapacitating, and the decedent would have been conscious and mobile for a short period of time. These injuries could be consistent with a fall, jump out of a moving motor vehicle. However, being pushed out of a moving vehicle or other inflicted trauma cannot be ruled out. Therefore, it is further my opinion that the matter of death is best classified as undetermined." On March 29, 2022, detectives served a search warrant to Ring, the video company, requesting all security videos from August 28th to August 29th, 2021. Unfortunately, Ring responded, claiming that their data retention period was just 60 days, meaning this evidence was now lost.
They even interviewed a bartender at one of the restaurants that they were at, and he said at one point Jason had taken the chair Leanne was sitting in and pulled her closer to him very aggressively and said to him, "I'm dealing with this crazy bitch." And the wife of the bartender said Leanne's head was down. She was very close off to people, just looking down the whole time.
Like, goes back to how everybody knew her. Like, that was not her. Like, he just stripped her of who she was completely. Like, that was not her. She never kept her head down and quiet. She didn't take there.
An officer from the Vehicular Crimes Unit also assessed the damage to Leanne's passenger side window. He discovered 2 points of impact where contact had been made and observed a spider web crack spreading across the window. As he opened the door, he found that the glass was bulging and pushed outwards towards the outside of the vehicle. He concluded that the initial impact had occurred inside the vehicle, forcing the window to bulge outward and crack.
In October of 2022, Leanne's case was reclassified as a homicide investigation, and the file was submitted to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, requesting negligent homicide charges against Jason Beck. On Tuesday, November 15th, 2022, the Peoria Police Department received a letter in response, claiming that an attorney had reviewed the report and made the decision to decline prosecution due to, quote, "no reasonable likelihood of conviction." The case was then closed.
He's still doing it.
He is, still to this day. And the thing is that some of these incidents with exes were him in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He was in high school. Like, seriously, it's like a serial person throughout their entire life. They're just going to keep doing this. They don't change. They don't. Like, I wish I could drive that into every single female's brain. They do not change. They're not going to change. You have to run. There's nothing that they can do. I mean, God, there might be one single person out there. I don't know, but I don't believe it. Like, I will never, ever, like, I so fiercely drive this into my daughter. Poor thing. She's 10 years old. She's like, my mom's nuts. But one day she's going to learn. And it goes back to, you know, how me and Jessi were very like, we want to be supportive of our friends. We don't want to be a downer. I'm an asshole now. Like, I feel bad. And I preface it to all my friends. I'm like, listen, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be saying this. But I think you need to run because this is a giant red flag. Instead of being like, oh, that sounds so great. He sounds so charming. Like, no, wait, let's dig in a little deeper.
Even though we'll never know what happened that night or behind closed doors with them, if we can get her story out and save one girl, two girls from him, which we've already saved one a couple weeks ago, then we're doing something, and I know she'd be proud of us. And that's all we can do.
As of today, Leanne's case remains closed, and Jason continues to have full custody of his and Leanne's son. If you're interested or would like more information about Leanne's case, or would like to share or learn more about Leanne's story, you can follow Leanne's Facebook page, which is in the show notes. Also, it's important to note here that Domestic Abuse Helpline, which can be reached at 1-800-799-7233. It's the National Coalition for Domestic Violence, but always call 911 when you're in a dangerous situation and need help immediately. As always, we appreciate you listening to our true crime podcast. We hope we did Leanne justice by telling her story and sharing it with our listeners.
And thank you to Jessi and Kristin for reaching out and speaking to us about Leanne.
As always, thanks for listening. And remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya.